this video between the videos I did last week and then the next upcoming bisexual top 10 and one other bisexual video that I'm going to be doing for Pride. And I wanted to do 4 in total, and I knew that one of them was going to be sort of me confessional style talking to you, and I was inspired by Roxane Gay because I have been reading her book Hunger, which is already giving me a lot of feelings. Highly recommend. And I thought of her book Bad Feminist, and I thought, I'm going to talk about me being a bad bisexual, because I think that part of the issue with bisexual representation is that because there isn't a lot of really nuanced ones out there, I mean there are some, but it's just not usually done well, you end up kind of attaching yourself to problematic images of your sexuality or problematic images of female sexuality because you really don't have anything else to attach to. So in the words of Usher, these are my confessions. I think the first thing I'll have to confess to is that I actually quite enjoy the song I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry, but I think it's because I've always listened to it and sang it and thought of it out of the actual queer-baiting context that the song exists in. I always kind of listened to it and thought of it as an actual sort of conflict of realizing that you are attracted to women and realizing that you enjoy it and that you have this weird patriarchal relationship that you're in, or this ideal of patriarchal relationships that you're supposed to be in, and having that conflict sort of appear in your mind. That's not what Katy Perry is talking about when you really break it down, but to me, when I was around the age of 16, when I was making AMVs as Amaterasu Tao, that was sort of the, sorry there was a bug, that was sort of the way I thought of the song, of like a girl realizing that she had these feelings and being like, I'm already in this relationship and it's gonna be awkward, but I don't really give a shit. And that's kind of how I've always sort of thought of it and listened to it ever since, even though that's not what it is. And I guess what made me want to think of that song in that way is that it was a fun song. I think a lot of times, like, there are songs like, you know, She Keeps Me Warm by Mary Lambert, which is an amazing, really beautiful song. And while it has this like uplifting, you know, soulful message to it, I liked the bubblegum poppiness of I Kissed a Girl. And by the time I was old enough to recognize and understand why it was problematic, I had already sort of, you know, put it in my head as a kind of a song that I would often look back and reflect on as a song that really helped me understand my own feelings about women and liking the experience of being with a woman. And so I always kind of had this love-hate relationship with Katy Perry. Katy Perry was actually one of my earliest crushes in terms of women, besides Emma Watson. My friends would all like make Katy Perry posters for me for my birthday and like give me all our stuff. I listened to Teenage Dream. I like wrecked that album. I was in love with Katy Perry, so you know this era has been really hard for me, but my attraction to her and her music sort of helped me be okay with being bisexual, and I think that was sort of like my earliest introduction to it. And then, and I'll talk to this more when I do my top 10 bisexual characters, but then I would watch films like Chasing Amy and Rent, and although both of those films equal very problematic depictions of bisexuality, they were all things that I sort of like, again, I apologize for every time I do this. There's a fly and I just have to destroy it. I would see things I recognized in it even though it was a problem. For example, with the character in Chasing Amy, Alyssa, what really struck me was the fact that when she was with a woman, she felt like she had to call herself a lesbian. And even though that wasn't really a label that fit her full feelings, it was easier than calling herself straight or bisexual or anything else. Like, and I understood that because when I was with my girlfriend, it was sort of like all of a sudden I was a lesbian in the eyes of everyone else. And I didn't feel comfortable with that, not because there's anything wrong with being a lesbian, but I wasn't a lesbian. I was attracted to men too. And, you know, even then in like 2000, and this would have been like 2012, 2013, you know, even though bisexuality was understood, it still wasn't really talked about and examined the same way. Like, you pick a side, you know, you're confused if you haven't picked a side. And so when I was with my girlfriend, there was this idea of like, well, I've chosen my side. And it was like, no, I haven't. And then when we broke up and I started dating my boyfriend, there was this immediate backlash of like, well, you're a fake gay person because now you're with a dude. And it's always like, when you're bisexual, I feel like you're always dealing with that pressure of like, you have to like almost date evenly or like not do like back to back, like one or the other. Like, there's all of this politics between who you date and who you choose to date. And it's understandable to a degree because there is that sort of fetishistic treatment of lesbian sapphic relationships. And like, there was this whole article in Cosmo like a year ago about women who want to have sex with women but then want to just be in relationships with men. Like, they're only interested in women for sex, and they don't consider themselves lesbians or bisexuals. But it's also a cruelty in that, because they're basically using women who actually are attracted to other women for their, you know, their sexuality, for their sex, and not for anything of value. And that's very disheartening. And that idea gets placed onto bisexuals. Like, all of a sudden, that's the image of us. Like, that we're all like girls who only want to be with women sexually and then want to date men romantically. And that's not the case. And I think the issue is that there's a lot of stigma if you are bi and you want to date a lesbian, because some lesbians don't want to date bisexual women because they all have that paranoia or that, you know, internalized biphobia of that we're gonna all go and date men or cheat on them with men. It's like, you can cheat on someone with anybody, you know what I mean? Like being a lesbian doesn't stop you from being a thought or being like a cheater, but somehow being bisexual just opens all these gates and everyone has to be nervous and anxious. And I don't think that's the case. You know, I came out to my mom because of my relationship with my girlfriend and because it was serious to me and I wanted it to be part of her life. If that was a phase or an experiment or something that I wasn't like really invested in, I wouldn't have done that. And I even have to remind my mom sometimes, because I remember one time she asked me like, are you still bisexual? I'm like, yeah, I am. Pussy is great. I'm just in a monogamous relationship, so it's not like I can just go, you know, do whatever. But that stigma, that hypersexualization is so palpable. And then when you're a woman of color and you're already hypersexualized on top of it, it's like, oh, so you're super, super slutty bisexual. And that's why I guess I kind of like Maureen so much in Rent. Not because because I always felt when I was watching that movie and listening to the song, like, everyone's really, like, Joanne is just fucking paranoid about Maureen cheating on her, like, to a ridiculous degree. And I never thought of it, and when I got older, I kind of felt like, you know, Maureen's a flirt. There's nothing wrong with flirting. And, you know, that paranoia is unhealthy. If you don't trust Maureen, you think Maureen's gonna cheat on you with everybody else, then you shouldn't be with Maureen. If you're just constantly freaking out because you think she's gonna cheat on you because she's like some slutty bisexual, then like, don't fucking be with her, Joanne. Go be with someone else who's stable. You know, and I think that stigma is hard because you'll have characters who are sexually adventurous and bisexual and characters who are not, and both of those are valid, but it's just harder with the more fully sexual ones because that stigma is already ingrained in so many people's mind. And it's like, do you know, represent that place and also buy into that stigma, or do you not? And only a few shows have really gotten that nuance quite well. Most of them just erase or just have the character choose one partner or the other. And it's complicated. And it's complicated because as people, we have journeys that we go on. We're not stereotypes in our own way. Like, we live our own truth. But when you write a character, their truth is what you make it. And there is almost a responsibility to do those things correctly and really understand the nuances of whatever you're writing for, no matter if you choose to have that character be, you know, someone who likes to have a lot of sex and is not monogamous, or someone who is monogamous. It really has to be a nuanced portrayal. I remember when I was watching Lost Girl, as terrible as it sounds, I really, like, part of the reason why I didn't want Bo to be with Dyson, besides the fact that I thought that Dyson was a waste, was that I didn't want Bo to have her endgame be a dude. And it's like, and it's silly because I'm dating a dude, so clearly I don't have any problems with bisexual women, you know, dating men or marrying men or whatever. But I just was like, she can't do it because, like, that's what everyone expects. That's a stereotype. But if she ends up with Lauren, or God forbid Tamsin, you know, it would be different. It would be revolutionary because you don't get bisexual women getting to be with the opposite partner as often as the other. And so that was such a powerful moment for me to see that, because I had so much doubts about that really happening, and then it did. Same thing with Korosami. Like, it was a thing of, like, yes, the buildup isn't 100% there, but when you rewatch it, especially the last 2 seasons, you do kind of see that close-knit friendship. And the thing about it is that those are the things that, everything about the Korosami relationship, if one of them had been a man, would have totally been seen as couple worthy. But because they're both women, it's just seen as friendship, except for those who are queer shippers. And so everyone's like, it came out of nowhere. Like, it didn't come out of nowhere. They have a strong relationship and friendship and bond that we've been seeing for 2 seasons. It's just that you didn't think that this was an option for either of them because they'd been attached to a man. And that sort of turning it on its head is such a great thing to see. And it just reminds you that bisexuality is not defined by who you date. It's defined by who you are, your preference, that you don't care. And it's always interesting when people ask me, like, well, what do you think about, like, dating a trans person? I'm like, well, I don't care about gender. Like, I don't have a preference. Like, you know, like, to me, it's, like, not even a question. Like, you know, like, why would that bother me? And I think that what we really need to focus on is, like, more male bisexual representation, because I feel like when I remember when How to Get Away with Murder, when I think it was Michaela's fiance was bisexual, they were like, you're gay, and they were just freaking out. It's just, you don't really get really good, nuanced male bisexual characters. I think Insecure did a really good job of talking about that men don't get to be sexually fluid, especially, you know, men of color, black men who are so, like, hyper masculinized that they cannot experiment or care. And, like, the amount of men who are just so, like, don't put that finger in my butt even though it would feel good. It's like they're just so afraid of, like, being perceived as gay that they allow themselves to miss out on things because they're just so, like, I can't be seen as a homo. And, like, you know, as someone who, like, likes both, and it's also, I do recognize that as a woman there is sort of, like, this idea that it's, like, I'm accepted at being bisexual because, unfortunately, like, at least in terms of the eyes of men, it's hot. You know, it's always like, you want to be in a threesome? It's like, no, I don't. Not if there's gonna be me and another. Like, I think it's so funny. All these guys always want to have, like, a 2-girl, 1-guy threesome. And I'm like, do you think you can really make 2 women come? Like, do you think that you can do that? Like, because I can almost guarantee you can't. Because it's hard enough for y'all to make 1 woman come. Now y'all trying to bring 2 into the mix? Let's just stop playing games here. Like, my bisexuality is not a way for you to fuck 2 women. And, you know, have us both sitting there bored and then we have to go at it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just like, it's a gateway to nowhere. It's just fantasy that gets put on to women of, like, oh, you're, like, sexually free. It's like, no, I am sexually free, but you're not, and I'm not gonna just do whatever you want because that's what you think is right. You know, it's just, like, dumb juvenile shit like that I hate. So, what else makes me a bad bi? I feel like maybe not a bad bi. I actually am a pretty good bisexual. I've been open for pretty much all of my, like, adult life, which I consider anything over 21. Because that's when I figured it out. I didn't figure it out till I was 20. You know, I didn't figure out till I was 20 that I was bi. So I've only really been, like, openly bi for 4 or 5 years. And it's like, when I realized I was bi, it was like a switch in my brain. Like, so much stuff made sense, you know? Like, even when I was younger, like, the female form I just find so much more beautiful than the male form. Like, women are just better looking than men on the whole. Like, our bodies are just really fucking great. Like, I look at my folders, and I was into, like, pretty boys like Shishomaru forever, ever. Like, also, you know, like, a nice, you know, guy as well. But, like, I just had folders full of, like, beautiful, beautiful fucking women all the time. Not women fucking, but beautiful women. And I look back at that now and just kind of laugh at how I tried to convince myself that I was straight. Not to say that straight women can't just enjoy looking at other women, but I would have, like, organized folders of, like, different actresses that I was into, and, like, this one and this one, and I would, like, you know, I wouldn't even be, like, sexually, like, doing anything to them, but I just loved looking at them and having their form, and just, like, women are just beautiful. And it's funny to me to look back and think about how the signs were all there, but my mind didn't accept it yet. Because when I was younger, I went to a school where, like, a lot of girls were experimenting, and I didn't want to do it then because I didn't want it to be something that I just did because everyone else was doing it. I didn't want to be sort of like, we used to call it gay till 2:30. Like, we were in school, and then they would all, like, fuck around, and when they went and left the school, they were straight. And to me, it's like, that wasn't something that I wanted to, like, experiment there, have everyone be in your business. I wanted to know who I was for myself. And when it happened, it was beautiful, and I have no regrets. It is, like, I know people are like, labels don't matter and blah, blah. I like my labels. I like knowing exactly where I stand, and even if there are spectrums, I know where I stand in that spectrum. So I'm proud to be bisexual. I love being bisexual, and even though my foundation's a little bit shaky, I'm glad that I know who I am today. And yeah, and I hope to all my bisexual people out there, yay, we're here! We're here! And we know ourselves. No matter what anyone tells us, you fucking assholes. We are the specialist, most beautiful unicorns. Plat out.